over from the House is S-159, which is miscellaneous economic development bill, mostly with the governor's ideas and levels of funding. And we went through it in detail. Representative Kimball gave us a very good overview, but I thought to sort of lock it in, we would have David Hall this morning walk us through the bill again, so we know all the pieces. And I also, I don't know, Nathan, were we able to confirm Stephanie Barrett to come in at 11?
Is confirmed.
Okay, so there's a tricky process question here that we've gone through in the past. We have other economic development things in terms of policies that we put through this committee. They went through appropriations. Appropriations took out the monies. I think some of them may be in the House bills, but most of them are not. So what is the interplay between the moving parts of our bills that have no money going into over to the House? And unfortunately, I think a lot of them using like S-62, the remote relocated worker bill as an example, there's no money for that in the House passed budget at this point. So it puts us sort of in a awkward, somewhat disadvantageous position in terms of our going forward. We're not in any place in the House bill, but their budget bill has their monies, or this S-159 has their monies in it, and we haven't acted on it in our appropriations committee. So it's kind of confusing. I hope Stephanie can explain, how this is processed out in the past. I'm sure it will all work out, but I thought it'd be helpful to have her here at 11 o'clock. So let's get started. I don't know, does anybody know if Becca's going to be joining us or not?
I'll text her and find out. I assume she's coming.
Good morning, David. Welcome. Good to see you.
Good morning.
So this is like a refresher for us from Representative Kimball, sort of like make us remember all the pieces, and some pieces that may be not in here as well, which we'll ask you about if it ever got discussed. So why don't we pull up on the screen, I think would make sense. We also probably have it posted at this point where we can pull it up from our committee page. S-159. Show's yours, David.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday, I think. Is it Tuesday?
Yes, it is Tuesday.
It
is Tuesday.
Great. All right. Hopefully on your screen, you're seeing H-159, an act relating to community and economic development and workforce revitalization. Well, you were seeing it, and then I moved it to my other screen and it stopped. Are you seeing it now?
Yes.
Great. So as the chair indicated, I think Representative Kimball gave you a pretty good flavor of some of the background. Definitely, he knows more about the why they did what they did than I do. I am happy to walk you through the language. As the chair said, this bill, it was a committee bill. It took the normal sort of course that we've had over the past few sessions together, where, of course, the administration has a set of proposals, and you guys take a look and decide which ones you're going to keep, which ones you're going to throw out. The interesting thing, that continues to happen is also the chair alluded to is the pairing of money in House bills with the substance of the language versus the Senate process of really stripping that all out and then doing all the money together in one process. it's a little bit tough with this bill. The reason being, this bill is, a lot about the money. You probably noticed, if you've looked at this closely, that there is not a ton of new substance necessarily to go along with the money. I think there's only maybe one, statutory creation of a new program, and that's Better Places. But a lot of this is short term. A lot of it has been converted to ARPA funds, and so that's all included in one package here rather than stripped out. Other than the $20.5 million, which was removed from this bill and put into the House budget, and that's for the Vermont State Colleges. And how you, as the chair said, how you want to reconcile all of this with the budget bills is going to be part of your task, I think. Hopefully Steph will be able to help us all keep that straight. Because at the end of the day, I do the words, not the numbers, for the most part.
So David, that's a very good introduction. Is there anything in this bill that on the Senate side that you're aware of that we've dealt with to date, or were we just assuming these were issues for the big bill?
When you ask dealt with, do you mean this session, or have you ever seen them?
No, I'm talking about this session in our committee.
I'll have to, refresh my memory as I go through, but I don't think so. My gut answer is no. There are perennial favorites like more funding for tourism. Obviously, you've done that. You've seen the Better Places program before, but I don't think that you've specifically addressed or passed any of these things. Originally, the new worker stuff was part of sort of the administration's package, but because you guys did that in your bill as 62 already, that is not in here. So this is kind of a wholly separate set of proposals.
So we, just for the committee's discussion or recollection, because you could all jump in here, but remember the spreadsheets and the flow charts that Ted Brady put before us?
Yeah.
I think this bill has a lot of those things in which we sort of deferred to the appropriations process, whereby, we might at some point write a letter on some of those things, but they saw fit in the House to put it in bill form.
Yeah.
And spent a lot of time, I guess, on these appropriation issues while we dealt with, I think, more policy bills. And I assume they didn't have to write a letter because they passed this bill, and the Appropriations Committee let them keep, for the most part, except for that 20.5 million for Vermont State Colleges or higher ed, they let them keep the money in this bill. So I assume, David, you may not know the answer to this, but I assume you probably do, is that when we see just on this first page, 2.5 million being appropriated in FY22, we won't see that again in their budget bill. They just left it in this bill. It's not replicated again in the budget bill. It's accounted for in all their spending, but it's not in that bill. I don't even know what the number of that bill is, of the big bill.
That's correct. This is separate and live appropriations.
Okay.
The Commerce Committee did review the governor's proposed budget and provide a memorandum, as most House committees do, concerning all the different stuff that would be within their subject matter jurisdiction. But these specific appropriations are contained and appropriated only in this bill, not in the budget.
Can you get us a copy of that letter and
Sure.
and Nathan, can you post that letter when we get it?
Sure can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this, the Agency of Commerce and Community Development chart that Ted presented is very useful because actually it tracks a lot of the spending in this bill. This one, that we have, I think, up on our website.
So this is primarily a spending bill, and we're gonna have to focus on whether we agree with the spending.
Yep,
There's not a lot of policy in here. Okay. So let's go through, and I mean, you don't have to read this to us, but you can sort of tell us in your own words what's going on, I guess.
Sure. Let me just, I've pulled up that letter so I can quickly send that to the committee.
oh, great, thanks.
So, yes, the first appropriation here in section 1, I think Representative Kimball may have mentioned that this tourism and marketing piece actually began its life as a proposal to make the permanent supplemental tourism and marketing monies available. And it followed a formula that appeared many years ago. My recollection is Representative Sherman in several different sessions proposed this mechanism by which you would have the revenue forecast come in, and then to the extent the rooms and meals taxes exceeded the revenue forecast, a certain percentage of that would be dedicated to tourism and marketing funding. Once again, that proposal was not picked up. It's again just another one-time infusion of money, $2.5 million. These are ARPA funds, and it really is, as the findings indicate, it really is targeted to promoting the state as we come out of the pandemic lockdown. And that's really it.
So they specifically said this is their, well, I know it's hard for you to say intent, but the intent was to make it one time and to revisit it again, potentially next year.
Yeah, my understanding is that, tourism and marketing basically already has more or less a game plan, and the extent to which and the amount to which they can execute that plan just depends on the number of dollars that are available. So the more money, bigger the buys, more the targeting.
Okay, so that limit, I'll get to you in a second, Senator Clarkson. I just wanted to follow up on that. So there was a presentation that defended this $2.5 million, or was this a number that was just dropped in by the administration and the House went with it? I mean, is there any like budgets, documents that were presented to defend this $2.5 million?
That's a fair question, and I don't actually know why they ended up on this particular number. Again, it began as a completely different proposal to have a dedicated funding source and then some money, and then House Commerce decided this number. I wasn't able to hear all of the testimony, so I can't tell you exactly why.
Michael, can I just touch on this? From our sheet from Ted, the actual money that they were proposing was $1 million one-time funding. So it continues to be one time, but it's more obviously in this bill. And I think that they remember tourism gets about just over 3 million in base funding, and this is obviously supplemental to really boost our beleaguered hospitality industry as we come out of COVID. But
Okay.
this is double, I mean, and there may be more to this, but it's significantly more than they initially asked for.
Okay, that's very helpful. And I think we're going to have Heather in tomorrow, so we can have her explain how they got to this number and why it's more than the 1 million that was asked for and where the 1 million came from.
And in that proposal initially from ACCD, remember, there was also an additional million for the stimulus program that tourism was overseeing. So that,
Did the
that-
do you know, Senator Clarkson, whether the governor's proposal or David included the Representative Sherman excess?
yes, it did.
It was a formula like that, the same construct. And as Senator Clarkson referenced, it also included the proposal for and the money for the buy local consumer stimulus,
Right.
an expanded version of the CARES Act program where people got the gift cards for local businesses.
Right.
The House did not continue that.
Okay, you recall last year, we were favorably disposed to doing something in that area with stimulus. So we'll probably be talking a little bit more as to whether we want to resurrect the governor's plan in that regard or something like it. Okay, that's helpful. It's a good start. Let's move on. There's no magic words here. It's just,
No,
okay, Okay.
there's probably, I don't know,
right.
it's one of those things where, it's really going to be predicated on the proposal and the work that tourism and marketing has in mind. So it's good that you'll have Heather to tell you what that is.
Okay, good. Section 2.
All right. So this technology-based economic development, nominally program. I mean, it's not creating a new program necessarily. This is an idea. This is one of those ideas that have been pitched before. You may remember from last year. So it's $1 million in ARPA funds. This is to try to give both technical assistance to businesses that are going for these federal grants. It's the Small Business Innovation Research Program and the Small Business Technical Transfer Program. So those are these two federal SBA programs. Technology-based businesses help them to bring this technology to maturity and in some cases, get a patent or other scalable technology. And the concept here is a 1-2 punch. First, provide this technical assistance to actually help these businesses succeed in getting the federal grant. And then the businesses that are successful and do get that federal grant, there's money in subdivision 2 here for a 50% state matching grant up to $50,000. So those two pieces together, $200,000 for technical assistance, $400,000 for state level matching grants.
Wait, so let's just back up. So the
Sure.
$200,000 to help prepare grant, and then when you make a grant proposal, there's matching funds requirement, and subsection 2, that's where that money comes from?
So the 200,000 goes to UVM, and it's to get UVM to help the business successfully obtain the federal grant. And then subdivision 2, that $400,000 is more grant money from the state to the successful business.
So why is it matching grant? Sounds like it's just a grant.
Well, the state is matching half of the federal grant.
So then 1 is the preparation and
Yep.
2 is the required match.
No, 2 is an addition. It's a supplemental award from the state. So 1 is money to help you get money from the feds, and then 2, if you do get money from the feds, we'll give you more from the state.
Okay, so it's not a required match. It's just we'll give you extra money.
Exactly.
Well, the opportunity for extra money.
Okay.
Where's the extra money coming from?
ARPA.
General
It's coming
funds?
from the ARPA funds.
Yeah,
It's not
can you-
general fund money we're talking about.
No, it's American Rescue Plan
And
Act.
so it is federal COVID money is the matching money that we're talking about then, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's to be distinguished from a traditional required match. It's just we're
Understood.
gonna give you more money. If you get federal money, we'll give you some more money.
Right.
Right.
And, I mean,
More
I think if it was traditional federal, if it was traditional matching funds, I think it would be disallowed. I don't think you could use federal money to match up federal money. So there might be a problem. Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. Also, I just have questions here about using UVM in this way. I'd like to hear more about this engagement piece, and I know ACCD would like to weigh in on this. I just, we have so many resources currently helping business on this, and I'd just like to know why our current existing resources, like our RDCs, our Vermont SBA, there's so many resources currently existing. I don't know why we have to use UVM in this capacity, but I'm happy to hear more.
And we also have, Senator Clarkson, I think a timing issue here with the big picture you're working hard to present to us in terms of ARPA money.
Yeah.
I mean, it becomes relatively small amount of money in terms of other ARPA funds that may go into economic development. I mean, it makes, in some ways, it makes our job so much easier, but in some ways it makes it so much harder. I mean, where does this fit in to the overall picture of coming out of COVID and economic recovery, building back better? It's almost like it's so tiny compared to some of the other stuff. So
Right. No, it is. And David, would you be kind enough, and I'm embarrassed to have to ask, but I will. The acronyms SBIR and STTR, just remind me, because they're federal grants and they refer to, but they don't, the bill doesn't say their name first. Oh, it's Small Business Innovation Research, right?
Yes.
Is okay. Got it. I just couldn't. Okay. And
What's-
then the other one is the Small Business Technical Transfer Technical Assistance. Is that right? The
Okay.
Small
STTR.
Business Technical Transfer is STTR.
Okay, great. Thanks.
okay.
Yep. So those are, those are SBA run programs to basically help with R&D and research and development, help small businesses commercialize new technologies. The federal grants usually range, I think, between $50,000 and $250,000. So I think the question of UVM is a policy question. Obviously, this is specific technological development. So it isn't just grant writing, but it's also the substantive technology that the business is trying to develop. I think part of the push is that UVM as a research institution has specialized knowledge in business and technological development, but who knows, maybe Norwich does too, or the state colleges or RDCs. I don't know. It's a fair question.
Another fair question, a basic question. Implement a technology-based economic development program. What is that?
Yeah, I don't know that it's more than providing technical assistance to these applicants. Again, this is, as I said at the top, this is
I understand.
not a new statutory program per se, and obviously it's funded with one-time federal monies, but it is called a program, and it's supposed to have some shape to it.
Okay, so can you get us, or how would we get, I mean, I'm sure there's a handout, we've probably seen it before, about this SBIR and STTR program. because I'm looking at these things, I hear the name, but I'm not sure I know what they do or what the
Right.
purpose is or what they are. I know, I remember from last year, we were leaving either money on the table or we were not doing as well as other states in terms of drawing down these federal funds. And it sounded like, they were technologically based, so they were sort of more futuristic economic programs, but I don't recall what these federal programs do. So we need we need to get on our webpage, or we need some background on these programs if we're going to fund them.
Right. And what's the interplay here with VSET also is, because I'd love to hear from them as well on this or with this.
I mean, this is good. I'm feeling more, feeling more and more like the Appropriations Committee, but that's important that the
Yep.
policy committees, understand this and make recommendations to the Appropriations
Yeah.
Committee. But, this is the kind of stuff you do in appropriations. You get a proposal and then you pick it apart and understand what you're funding. But that's what this bill essentially does, is it funds a bunch of programs. What is this last 200 or this next 200? This is just another 200,000 to small businesses?
It's industry research partnership program. Is that another new program or does that exist under the SBA?
No, this is, it's more money. It's part of the total going to UVM. So remember, this is 1 million of ARPA funds to UVM. So 200 is, number one for tech assistance. 400 is for the matching. That's 6. 200 more is for basically, it's to give grants to Vermont small businesses. You see in 3A here, to purchase services and technical assistance from universities and research institutions. I mean, this is like lab work and technological assessments. It doesn't necessarily have to be purchasing that from UVM, but UVM is charged with administering this money. And I think on the top of 3 and B here, part of the thrust is to try to build the connections between businesses and higher education institutions in this state. So it's kind of both build those relationships, but also get specific technological assistance from universities in Vermont. And then the last part of that 1 million is to the UVM Office of Engagement, and that's $200,000 to administer the funds. So I understand that there's not a lot of meat on the bones in 4. Why do they need $200,000 to administer $800,000? I can't give you a good answer for that.
Yeah, it's a significant percent of the $1 million.
Yeah.
It seems like a huge amount. Also, I'm just concerned that, there are lots of institutions that have research, that are doing research in areas that are important for our future, and it isn't just UVM. And while I honor UVM's research engine, I also know we're doing it elsewhere at Middlebury, at our state colleges, and we need to be sending this kind of, it needs to be obviously program specific. If you're doing things on meteorology, you're not going to UVM, you're going to Linden. I get, or Northern.
Yeah. So if we were to, and we shall get more deeper into this, this is essentially the same. They've accepted the governor's proposal in this area, because I remember it was $1 million, I think, broken up this way. Who is I know it used to be Ted Brady. I don't know if he's still there, but
No, he's gone to VLCT.
right. So it's an unfair question. Who would come in and explain I mean, I think we need someone from the Office of Engagement and also
Yeah.
someone from the administration.
It would be Tate took Ted's place,
Yeah.
but I
We do-
also just asked UVM like who is responsible for this. I asked the Office of Community and State Relations.
Wendy will know who.
Yeah, I asked Wendy.
Yeah.
I asked Wendy who we should talk to.
Yeah.
It's very nebulous, this section, I think.
So, yeah, Lindsay or somebody who's been there, maybe Lindsay or Jess or Joan could, I know Joan, I'm pretty sure Joan would like to weigh in on some of this.
Well, I know, I think I started to get at this in our last meeting. Keisha, would you, Senator Ron, would you mind in your own words explaining to me what the Office of Engagement is? I know you're connected with it somehow.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of major public institutions have a community university partnership office. And this has become, I think, the next evolution of what those look like and do. They're supposed to be the place of two-way exchange between in creating partnerships that benefit, both the students and build on the capital of a research institution to support the state. So kind of like what UVM Extension does in agriculture, which is get around the state and offer technical assistance and support. And some of that is generates a small amount of revenue back to UVM Extension. Some is done, as a public service. So similarly, this would start to set up financial structures for these kinds of relationships. I mean, frankly, as you may know, we go to UMass Amherst for a lot of our state research now. And, hopefully this would help UVM build its capacity to take on more research. So we keep that money supporting Vermont students, Vermont researchers, and Vermont activities. Wendy just told me that it would be Kirk Dombrowski, the Vice President of Research, and Chris Kaliba, who's the new director of the UVM Office of Engagement. And, I just joined this board. I think Chris Kaliba would be the person to articulate what it's supposed to be and do. And of course, at some point, if it makes sense with this amount of money and to hear from the leader of the university himself, we might have President Garamella in, because this is really his brainchild from his time at Purdue in Indiana, and really building their relationships with economic sectors, with industry leaders, and with other institutions for these kinds of partnerships. So it's something that's important to him, and we may want to hear him articulate it directly.
Okay. That's very helpful. Okay, good. Let's move on. This the $2 million. This is more general. It almost, am I being too flip here to say that $1 million above could almost be added to the $2 million, and it could all be summarized in this subparagraph B? I mean, it's more, the $1 million is more specific, but it seems like it's in the same bailiwick of to leverage research service and data science capabilities of the university, even though I guess the first 600,000 goes directly to federal programs, not to UVM, but to business, right? Is that correct?
The 800,000 above out of the million is more or less direct business. And then the 2.2 million remaining is all to UVM Office of Engagement.
Yeah. So certainly the last 200,000 could sort of be combined with this 2 million, but okay. Let's go on.
So UVM is supposed to report on how this all played out next January. And then D is really the tie-in to the ARPA funds to promote technology-based assistance, to businesses that suffered COVID harm.
So is that a requirement of all, is that at least one requirement of all ARPA?
Yeah, it's kind of like the CARES Act in that respect. I mean, it's a very general, and obviously we still don't have the lengthy FAQs under ARPA and the guidance, but the even under the CARES Act, you know, the business assistance monies are really quite general, and the nexus just needs to be that the business has suffered harm due to COVID.
So could you just go up a little bit and I could look at this language again?
Yeah.
So
And-
all the money appropriated in this section has to be used to promote that have suffered harm due. So if there was a business that started work up today and opened in July, could there be no contracting under this section with
Yeah.
that business because it didn't exist? Well, maybe it does exist. COVID's still going on, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's a fair point, and I think the answer is no. I don't think they would help those businesses. I mean, I do think you have to demonstrate some adverse economic effect of COVID, and I mean, there's obviously no there's no standard for what the loss is or anything like that, but it is, you know, economic harm due to the pandemic.
Okay, something to keep in mind. Okay, let's go to section 3 if we may.
Yep. So this is amending session law from a couple of years ago. And you may remember in the context of the workforce development bill, the big one you guys worked on, one of the charges there was really for DOL working with AOE, state colleges, and the Adult Technical Education Association to basically design what the ideal model would be for the post-secondary CTE system. At this point, it's you know, it's a system that is not really a system at all, right? There's adult tech centers, there's CCV and state college programs, there's you know, sort of a mismatch across the state. And you know, I think the purpose was for these folks to all come together, decide, should this be housed within the state college system? Should this be housed within a freestanding adult CTE system? Where should the offerings occur? Who should do what? And come back and tell us. That work did not happen, largely because of the pandemic. And so this directs them to hire a consultant to lead this work. And that should happen by September. The consultant would conduct the stakeholder engagement process and then come back with a preliminary report next January on the status. And then the final report would be due December of next year, 2022. And they've got a $75,000 appropriation for that work. And that's from existing funds that are available in the Workforce Expansion Fund, which basically used to be Next Gen.
Right.
What do you think of this, Senator Clarkson?
I think this must be done, and I'm so pleased that they have returned to that work that we did and reminded us that it still needs to be done. And I applaud this effort because we need to really take all the little patches of adult CTE and create a single quilt. And that is the work before us. And it has not, I think we were hoping we'd be farther along, obviously, at this point. So this, I think, at least resets the ship. It's sort of like giving the ship out of the Suez and pointing it into allowing it to continue its path to its final destination. it unsticks it. And so I actually applaud this, and I look forward to hearing from the stakeholders about this, but I am assuming they are supporting it as well.
Is there any, I get nervous whenever, as you know, whenever I hear the multiple silos of work. Well, this is not necessarily workforce development. This is more narrow. I'm just wondering if, do we have to have any concern about the independence of this report of the consultant? I mean, are they going to be in any way controlled by their payer in terms of what they?
It's a good question, and I think we should actually find out who is taking the lead here. And I think that's one of our witnesses that we need to chat with. DOL, it's Sarah. I think we need to hear from Sarah and from Joyce Judy. And
Senator Brock, you're into all these auditing things and stuff. Have you ever come across like language where you make an attempt to guarantee the independence of the? This may not be the
I've
case.
certainly seen language like that, and I think independence is a very important issue. Defining it and pinning it down is not as easy as it sounds. When you hire consultants, I mean, you can look up a consultant and do they lean left, do they lean right, what have they done before, and so on. But somebody's got to make that evaluation and judgment. I think we can come up with some language, though, that would help.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on.
Basically, it's almost man from Mars concept that you sometimes, if you really want independence, you bring in a man from Mars who has never seen anything on Earth to be able to compare to and has no prejudices.
Right.
Unfortunately, we typically don't hire men from Mars.
Right, right.
but the women from Mars do really well. I would just say that in some ways you don't want somebody who doesn't have any grounding in these issues. So, I mean, it's a balancing.
Grounding is one thing, prejudice is the other. What you don't want to do is you don't want to hire people who have preconceived conclusions.
Right.
That you don't even have to have the report written because you know what their answer is. And that's what I would always be concerned about. And I think we can get some language that perhaps better grounds it. But I agree that some testimony would be helpful.
Okay, let's go to Northern Borders.
Oh, this is the most modest part of this, of this whole bill, but it's very important.
This is policy.
Yeah, but it is
I know.
important. This is extending, David, you should speak. Sorry.
You probably know as much about it as I do. I don't spend a lot of time hanging out in the subject of group insurance for state employees, but
right.
My understanding is the same as yours, is that we have different, little different groups that are created either by the state or in this case, the federal government, that are allowed to participate in the state group benefit plans. They do pay their own way, but they do have to have the statutory authorization to be participants in that capacity. So you'll see there, since there is no more Vermont Film Corporation, we took that out, but the other examples are the State Employees Credit Union, the State Employees Association, the Council on the Arts. So this would add to that defined group. What do we mean by employees? The Northern Border Regional Commission. Right.
And in all, the new director of the Northern Borders Commission lives in Reading, is in part of Windsor County, and spoke with Charlie Kimball and myself. And this was work that was to have been done, I believe, a year ago. I mean, I believe this was discussed in House Commerce and maybe in Ways and Means. I'm unclear, but it was discussed and then again got a little derailed. So this has been work that, and I think Ted Brady was involved with it. I know Ted, I'm pretty sure Ted was involved with it, and it got derailed. And it would be great. They need to. They're now anchoring more and more in these Northern New England states, And anyway, it would be great if we could do this.
So what does it do?
It enables them to come under just like the Arts Council or several other agencies come under and use the Vermont benefits program, the state
Health insurance?
benefit programs.
It's all benefits or just
That-
health insurance?
I don't know, but I definitely know it's health insurance.
And how many,
But we can clarify, and we can get him to come and talk with us, and we can get Beth Fastigi to. I assume HR oversees this.
so is it just a handful of people or,
Yes, I don't think it's more than 10 people.
okay, let's move on.
All right, so the next piece, this is, as I mentioned before, the Better Places program. This does create a new statutory program and a fund. And if it's okay with you, I think we can skip over the
Yep.
findings and intent language,
Yep.
unless you really want to read it right now. But
Okay.
otherwise, so this creates within DHCD the Better Places program and the Better Places fund, which is going to be a special fund. And they do want to have a requirement that it be crowd-funded projects for creating, activating, revitalizing public spaces. So there was a significant amount of discussion, and the policy choices that are in this program really relate to whether there has to be a match, whether it has to be crowd-funded, what does the match need to be? And you'll want to look closely at all those choices and hear from the department. But in a nutshell, the Department of Housing and Community Development has the program, has the fund. The fund is made up of either state or federal monies, gifts, grants, other contribution, and any interest. And then, there's a definition of public space, which you've seen before because we talked about this program before. It's an area or place open and accessible to all people with no charge for admission, village, greens, squares, parks, community centers, town halls, libraries, other publicly accessible buildings such as sidewalks, streets, alleys, and trails. So this does range, these projects could range from buildings to village greens to parklets to sidewalk improvements. It's all about, revitalizing these public spaces. So under D here, this is kind of the nuts and bolts of the awards and eligibility process. So DHCD
Where are you? What page are you on? I've lost you. I'm still up in section 6.
page 12,
Okay.
subsection D.
Thank you.
And unfortunately, when it's the official House pass, there's no more line numbers. So I'm at that subsection D on page 12.
Got it.
So under 1 here, DHCD will come up with the application process, eligibility criteria for prioritizing assistance. 2, the department may award a grant to a municipality, a nonprofit organization, or a community group with a fiscal sponsor for a project that is located in or serves a designated downtown, village center, new town center, or neighborhood development area that will create a new public space or revitalize or activate an existing public space. There's a lot going on there. These grants can go directly to municipality. They can go directly to a nonprofit. Or that third option is where there's some community group set up. Let's just say it's like an unincorporated association. It doesn't necessarily have nonprofit status with the IRS. So they can work with what they call a fiscal sponsor to receive the money. And that way, The fiscal sponsor kind of serves as the registered nonprofit, and you can make donations to that sponsor that are tax deductible. And that sponsor working with the community group is the one that actually receives the money. The department can give you more details about how they set that up, but that's a pretty typical construct. It does have to be located in or serving one of the designated areas. So at this point, I think Chris Cock can give you the exact number, but most of the state has one of the designations. Most of the towns has some kind of designation, and it doesn't necessarily have to be physically located in the boundaries of that designated area. It can just serve one of those designated areas as well. And then the last piece is the public space could be new and or it could be existing and they just need to quote unquote revitalize or activate it. So it's, you know, it's a lot of words, but I think it's actually pretty broad in the scope of what could qualify. And they have, of course, lots of actual examples in the real world of what they've done with these monies.
Right. And I just remind people that we're hoping to hear tomorrow from other states that have done it and leveraged so much money and so much development in their downtowns as a result of these fairly modest investments. So we're hoping to have this program illustrated tomorrow.
So there's a few more pieces here. You'll see in 3 that there can only be 1 grant per municipality in the calendar year. So basically just 1 project per town per year. In 4, the minimum grant is 5,000, the max is 50,000. Under 5, the department has to develop matching grant eligibility requirements to ensure a broad base of community and financial support for the project. And there's conditions on that. So you'll see on the top of page 13 here, A through D, a project it shall include in-kind support and matching funds raised through crowdfunding that includes multiple donors. Under B,
I've been looking, and maybe it's further down. I don't see any definition of crowdfunding, and if that's common parlance today, can you define that for me?
yeah, I mean, it's this concept of setting up, you know, in all likelihood, using a third-party vendor to create a campaign to raise money from multiple donors from the crowd. And, you know, the real thrust behind the requirement for both in-kind support and matching funds from multiple donors is that, you know, the projects that have the broadest base of support will be able to demonstrate that through the willingness of people to both do the work and from multiple donors, the crowd-funded, you know, mechanism. So you'll see that there are requirements like in B, you can't donate to your own crowdfunding campaign. C, a single donor can't give more than 10,000 or 35% of the campaign goal. And in D, an applicant shall provide matching funds relative to the crowdfunding. So the whole purpose of crowdfunding, literally funding from a crowd from multiple sources, is to demonstrate this broad base of support. And the limitations in A through D are to, you know, select for those projects that have broad base support. There's a lot of discussion on this about the extent to which, you know, you're going to force people to give in kind, or you're going to limit the amount that a donor can give, or things like that. So these are policy choices, but again, the purpose of this funding approach is that there are multiple people willing to donate to the project and endorse it, to vote for it with their services and with their dollars.
Right.
I'm still not understanding if there's any. I understand there's limitations on what qualifies for a project's fundraising to apply for this money. I'm not understanding what crowdfunding adds to this. I mean, I just gave money to a food shelf. They asked for money for donations from a lot of people. Is that crowdfunding?
Yeah, I would say old fashioned fundraising that had a lot of people in the community supporting something counts as crowdfunding. I mean, I think what they're trying to show is that the project demonstrates and giving money, even small amounts, demonstrates support for a project. So I think what this is asking for basically is a demonstration of local support. And crowdfunding is just the new term for fundraising. I mean, any any development effort would hopefully for a project like this have broad community support, and just like your food bank.
So okay, so that's sort of what I'm getting at, Senator Clarkson. I look at A at the top of the page. A project shall include in-kind support and matching fund raised through, if it just said matching funds that includes multiple donors, what
Yeah.
does a crowdfunding approach add to this?
It means small contributions from a lot of people rather than most of the money being raised from one or two or three people and then a few others. I think that's the underlying premise. It's crowdfunding is raising money through small donations, but from many people.
So do we need
Like a Kickstarter campaign.
Do we
If
need
you're trying to raise $100,000, you want $1,000 from 100 people, not $80,000 from one person and $20,000 from a few other people.
maybe all I'm asking for, do we need a definition? We use the word crowdfunding. Do we need a definition, or is that so well known at this point that we don't need a definition?
It is sort of the new term for a broad development appeal
In the parlance of our times.
it's in the parlance of our times, but we could define it. I don't think there's any problem with that. But I think the emphasis, as David said, is on lots of smaller gifts rather than a major donor that is the primary, backer of a project. But I think multiple donors is what we're looking at, and a range of gifts.
I just don't want to see the agency, saying, okay, this project had 10 donors of 10% each, and that's not crowdfunding. Or maybe I do want them to say that.
Yeah.
Unless there's some parameters on, we use the word crowdfunding several places in this section. And there are some limitations of the 10,000, 35% matching funds, but that's it. There's no saying you need to do something, on the internet, and you need to have, at least 50 donors of, $5 or more. There's nothing like that. So I don't know whether that becomes a problem for the agency. We'll hear from them, I guess, as to how they're going to interpret it. So, okay.
Well, let me just raise just another point of view here. I realize that crowdfunding and so on is very trendy, but if you're looking at something that is supposed to be a public space, open and accessible to everyone, there's squares, parks, greens, town halls, libraries, something that most people would want. Why would we tell Bill Gates, if he happened to live in town, that he can't donate $50,000 to this because it's got to be crowdfunded?
Well,
why would we do that?
I don't think this excludes that. I just think that it also wants to demonstrate there's broad community support.
No,
I
it does.
agree
Well,
with
broad
you.
community support could be everybody contributing $2 and Bill Gates contributing 100,000.
Well, that's,
Senator Clarkson, look at subsection C.
oh, okay.
I'm just wondering, why would we do that?
Well,
I realize
that's
trendy,
why we're looking at it.
what's the purpose?
I think, I'm guessing that we'll hear from Chris Cochran tomorrow. I guess the purpose is this is supposed to be projects for community engagement. Yes, Bill Gates could give $50,000, but then they would be excluded for from the matching funds here.
Right.
Well, I guess that's right. But, you know, you sort of say to yourself, if these are good projects, and again, you can gauge community support by everything from a vote to $1 a community member. But why would we shoot ourselves in the foot in terms of limiting the amount that someone could give to this?
Well, I
Well,
think it's a good question, but I think the answer you'll probably hear is the flip side is, what if Bill Gates wanted to give $50,000 and there's nobody else wanted to contribute and they needed $5,000 from this fund? Should that be the proper use of this fund? Well, it's a good.
Well, again, I'm not precluding the notion of a demonstration of public support so that the community wants it. That's not the issue. The issue is, why do you put the financial limitations that you put on it if there are other methods to gauge community support without the municipality shooting itself in the foot?
We can certainly discuss that, but I think the whole objective here is to just show there's broad community support. And,
Well, I think we could do, but, you know, again, I think we should discuss that issue of what's the basis of limitation, and does it make any sense at all?
I don't disagree with Senator Brock. I think what we're talking about is, if Bill Gates gave $100,000, the state wouldn't match Bill Gates' $100,000. The state's, I thought this was matching a crowdfunding operation, which I feel like, I hope we're not limiting the overall project from getting a very large donation, but the idea is the state probably couldn't match one large donation as opposed to matching a crowdfunding effort.
right.
Well, the point is, you have limitations in there as to what the state can match. There's no need that those limitations change in any way. You know, but it is not at all unusual for wealthy people to donate large amounts of money to public projects that have matching grant requirements. That's one of the incentives that organizations use in order to fundraise, and not fundraise solely to small donors.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about this a lot tomorrow.
Right.
And I notice it's 11:05. I don't know if Stephanie, I assume Stephanie is with us. Yes, she is. Stephanie. So we're gonna jump off this now so we can use Stephanie's time. And we have I think pretty much 2/3 of tomorrow just on Better Places to talk about that. So we'll have a lively discussion, hopefully, on that. Does anybody have any further questions before we let David go and start talking to Stephanie? Okay.
No.
Stephanie, welcome.
Can we get?
Thank you, David.
Can we get rid of the screen of the, or do you want to keep the bill up?
No,
Oh.
it's fine. Okay. I don't see Stephanie yet. Okay.
I see her little square.
Okay, Stephanie, are you with us?
Maybe we could crowd fundraise and get her square to turn into a person.
I hope I didn't lose David when we don't have Stephanie.
No, David's still with
I'm
us.
still here. I'm just trying to hang out in the
Stephanie,
background.
Stephanie, are you here? I don't see her. I tell you what, why don't we take a quick 5-minute break, and Nathan, maybe you can track Stephanie down. We'll talk to Stephanie about the budgetary process here